Look the other way, deny, or maybe, Alec, reject, although it doesn't seem all that likely. Lebanon really needs the gas, really needs the fuel. As we've said so often, as so many have said so often, one of the worst economic crises since the 1850s, according to the World Bank. So obviously, Lebanon needs the gas badly enough that Hezbollah can claim it's actually Egyptian gas or Jordanian gas and so on and so forth. By the way, part of this report says it's actually not going to happen in the near term because the relevant pipeline needs to be repaired, and the repairs could take years. So one wonders exactly what Lebanon does in the meantime and whether this deal is actually relevant, if that's in fact the case, if it happens years from now. By the way, we should also mention that this is, and emphasize, this is one report. It hasn't been sourced, and so it may or not actually pan out. Although, Alec, it has to be said, this isn't, maybe surprisingly, to those of us who don't necessarily follow this particular issue on a day-to-day basis, not a complete shot in the dark or a surprise. If you look back over the last few months, a number of people have floated this. A number of analysts have said this is something that might happen.
Especially because of the American interest in getting the Lebanese off Iranian aid, off Iranian dependence. And surely, and the Americans apparently were involved in brokering this if indeed this were to happen.
That's right. And the Lebanese government, such as it is, also would like to see an alternative. And again, Lebanon just needs the gas as quickly as it can get it and as smoothly as it can get it. So if this were to help the Lebanese move in that direction, obviously there are a lot of actors who are relevant to this who would be happy to see it. But it is, of course, a man biting a dog, if you will. It doesn't happen every day in the Middle East. We're much more used to looking at pipeline maps in Europe. I think we'll be starting to do that in our part of the world as well. With a deal like this one, it is a curiosity. It is if it actually goes forward and if it actually happens and if Lebanese are actually going to be using natural gas that was found in Israeli waters. It will be an interesting example, Alec, of how economics can trump politics, even if politics as charged as they are in our part of the world.
Right, but that's exactly one of the interests that Israel for sure has, is to create this dependency with potential enemies that can turn them into allies. And we see already that Israel has these deals with Egypt. It's now doing these deals with Jordan on water and energy and gas. And if Lebanon is also part of that entire framework, it basically means that they need Israel, and then it makes Israel's standing that much more stable in the region.
Yeah, but of course, Lebanon's a very different case. Israel has formal peace treaties with Egypt and Jordan. And yes, it's true that over the course of the decades of those peace treaties, less so in the last few years, the cooperation with Israel has been kept out of public view, including on energy. But even so, the situations in Egypt and in Jordan and their connections with Israel and their internal politics, even in Jordan, is different than it is in Lebanon, where this issue is so highly charged, where Hezbollah is so powerful, that makes this something very, very different, very, very new, which is, of course, why we're talking about it. It is news. Again, we have to wait and see, though, of course, if the gas actually flows. Again, according to parts of this report, that may actually take years, and that, of course, is something to keep our eyes focused on.
All right, Owen Alterman, thank you very much for that analysis.